To start this drawing, I'm going to tone in this section here with a little bit of that charcoal that's fallen onto my easel, just to give it a nice gray mid-tone to work with. It's a lot harder to work from the white paper than a middle gray like that. I'm not doing anything specific, it's just the whole thing, just kind of gray. If you don't have a messy workspace like I do, you can just ground up some willow charcoal or some compressed charcoal on some sandpaper or something like that. Smack it on there like that. Just blend it nicely. It's getting a little dark. That's okay. Now, I'll take that willow piece of charcoal again. And I'm gonna look at my reference here. I have it printed out. I'm gonna drop the actual reference that I'm using here in the description for you guys, so you guys can just pull it and then try it yourself and follow along. So, I'm gonna get the angles of the eye and where the shadow shapes are and kind of establish those very roughly with the willow charcoal. Now, I'm not using curves when I'm drawing yet, just straight lines and angles, because if you try to guess with a curve, it's gonna be a lot harder to make it accurate than just finding the different angles. For example, this angle here with the eyelid down here could be one angle, one line. This one across can be another. This one across can be a third angle that way, instead of trying to get the entire curve of the eye. It's not gonna be that as effective for you. So it's a lot more space to actually mess up that way. The pupil's gonna be somewhere in here. Very rough, very rough. Almost looks the same as the background of the paper now, anyway. And then this lower eyelid here, it's gonna be kind of in this area. So, as you can see, it's very rough, but I'm only really looking at these large, dark shapes and light shapes and kind of trying to contrast those and pop those in before I start to get into any details. I think the main mistake that I see younger artists and amateur artists get into is that they work with the details way too quickly and try to focus on just the detail parts to make the entire drawing. But really it's the opposite. This is a knead eraser, by the way. You need to work on the big areas first. Make sure those are locked in, that it reads really well without any detail in the drawing. Before you add detail, you want it to look like the thing you're drawing, which is not an easy thing to accomplish, but it's all about light and shadow. So it's going to be somewhere around here where the light's hitting there. Once again, trying to get those angles with straight lines, not with curved lines. So I'm starting to kind of get an idea of where I'm going to want these angles to live. And real life is a lot of grays. There's not much black and there's not much white. It's mostly grays. So the more gray you can keep something while still differentiating the values, which is the lightness and darkness, the better and more realistic your piece will look. Also, I'm looking at my reference probably almost half the time that I'm drawing. And I see sometimes people just really looking at their drawing for an extended period of time and just working on it. But then they forget what the reference looks like. So then they're actually just kind of creating their own drawing from their mind and not using the reference, and they're gonna get something else completely different than the reference, which is okay, but not if you're actually trying to draw what's on the reference. That's gonna get you further and further from it, actually. This is just a charcoal pencil, soft charcoal pencil. Kind of refining a little more and more. I see there's a dark shadow coming from this side, this way. Once again, I'm not using curves, just hashing. And then lots of darkness here where lots of shadow under the eyelid where the iris pupil is. So it's the iris inside, right? And then the pupil? Other way, okay. It's the pupil inside and then the iris. That's what it is, right? Okay. So I always forget that, what they're called. I don't have my correct terms. That's why I'm an artist. I don't do well with words. So little by little, you're gonna push and pull the values as they become more and more apparent. Don't go too dark too quickly, and also don't go too light too quickly. You should be somewhere in between, pushing and pulling little by little. You shouldn't go from white to black in your drawing very quickly, because if you do, first of all, you probably have it in the wrong place. You're probably gonna have to move over a lot of your sketch, constantly kind of forming it to different parts, which is okay, but it's really hard to do effectively if you have a hard line and a hard dark line where you're supposed to have a highlight or something like that. So keep yourself from needing to go back on something that you cannot go back on by just developing it overlap, overlap, overlap to make something dark instead of going straight to dark. See, this is already reading like an eye. And I've barely actually drawn an eye. I'm just drawing a bunch of angles and trying to locate where things are and values, and trying to overlap and deepen the values and where they need to be, and to lighten the values in other areas. But there's a shadow being cast by these eyelashes here and the eyelid over here. And I'm kind of just hinting at that. I'm squinting a lot while I work on this, and you know, you guys always hear me say that, but I can't stress it enough that I'm not trying to be distracted by these details that that can get overwhelming really quickly. Work it to bite-sized pieces that are more digestible by keeping it simple. They are bigger size pieces technically that you're working with, but it's more digestible in the sense that it's simpler. It's like one large value rather than lots of smaller values and lots of smaller intricate details and textures. You don't actually really need much of a texture either in what you're working on, because you can have the mind kind of fill in and trick the eye, our eye, the viewer's eye, into seeing textures where there really isn't any by just having correct values. Like the texture of skin, for example, can be manufactured in a way that's not actually there, but appears to be there, right? Okay, cool. I've been in a nice spot that I can just start to bring in the highlights again that I lost with my kneaded eraser. A little brighter there. The white of the eye is actually still gray. It's just lighter. It's the lightest point in this drawing actually here in this reference. And then this right side is actually a lot lighter, darker than the one on the left, as you can see. And then the bottom of the eyelid is catching some light there. And a little bit of light here that's a little bit bright. Probably not as bright as that, so I'll tone that down a little bit. And then you have some on the inside of the eye where I think it's called the tear duct. I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but I know what the eye looks like. And a little bit more on the light. It's really important. You can go really overkill on using the kneaded eraser and just wanting to see if you see a light area here. Some people might just want to be like, okay, that's light, so let's erase that. But no, that's way too bright. Do you see that? So what I'm gonna do instead is actually, here, that's still too dark. Let's darken that, okay. So what I'll do instead is just little by little push or pull the charcoal out of here. Little by little until it starts to seem like the right value. And I'm trying to create the right value, not just brightness in general. You don't want it overexposed. Reality's very gray, which will also in turn make your highlights actually so much more powerful if you have controlled gray values. Then when you do have your highlight, like I'll lighten the iris here, and leave that pupil there. And what this will allow me to do is pop in like highlight on here, like on the eyelid, the top eyelid. It'll just be a lot brighter. And then I'll take this, you can do this with the tip point of your knead eraser, or you can use like a mechanical eraser like this that's detailed, and drop a tiny little white highlight there that's really bright. Now you can try to get to the white of the paper as close as you can, and that just gives it this really bright look in this area. Maybe you can even pull it to the left a little bit. That's nice. It's not exactly like the photo, but I do like where it's going. I can touch this up a little bit. It's easy to get a little bit out of hand and a little bit overkill on this erasing too with this thing. It's fun. But that's all just details now. And really the only thing that I would add is maybe some of the eyebrows, catching a little bit of these lights. Some of the hairs there. And then we can add some eyelashes. Now the eyelashes can be very subtle. You don't have to make them too exaggerated just because you know they're there. Just hint at them being there with some value changes. Don't draw something that really isn't there. Like you could see that they're there, but they're not very bold. They're not too noticeable. And a little bit of the shadows here from them as well. There's some a little bit wonky about this eye because it's AI generated, but that's okay. Still makes for good references. Just be careful about what you choose for your references from AI generation. It's very useful, but it can easily get really weird really quickly, so just be wise about that. I love using AI generated views or photos for references, but I'm very discerning about which ones I want to pick that don't look as weird. Okay. I think I'll leave the drawing at this. I'm pretty happy with it. I could totally go into this way more detail, take a lot longer. Actually, let me fix this part real quick. And take a lot longer and really refine the piece, but I think that it's reading well overall. That I have it in a place where it looks like an eye. It looks like light's actually hitting it. Without having to rely too much on detail. Now I'll peel this off for you guys just so you can see the clean edges, even though I got the rest of the paper dirty. Maybe it's a little satisfying to see. Everybody wants to see the big reveal, right? Let's see here. Slowly do that. There you guys go. That's how to draw an eye with charcoal.